ではとそれが思ったのです。
超過賃金中です。
調査が進行中です。そして私たちは展開を追っています。マーク・カーニーは北米の利柄関係を根本的に再構築しました。
And now the latest developments. Experts are weighing in on the economic shifts expected in the coming quarter. Stay tuned for our exclusive analysis.
全くありませんね。なぜなカーニーが昨日行ったことはね、単なる記者会見や政策発表ではありませんでした。それは70年間この大陸を支配してきた前提を完全に解体するものでした。アメリカがカナダを必要とする以上には、カナダがカメナダを必要としているという財政です。2025年3月20日木曜日は、マーク・カーニー州総は議会の前に立ちました。そしては、カナダのどの指導者も決して口にする勇気を持てなかったことを言いました。彼はカメラをまっすぐに見つめて、カナダが前進することを発表しました。彼が民意傾注的な経済主演石地と呼んだもので前進するのです。一時的でもなくし、大権的でもなくし、恒久的なものですね。彼はアメリカ市場を完全に回避する公営インフラを構築しています。そしては彼はすでに欧州連合、日本、西、韓国と予備合意に調印しています。そしてはトランプが強硬を感じるべき部分があります。それはメキシコで、そうです、メキシコですね。カナダは今ね、トランプ時に USMCA パートナーを別個の租域に引き止めて、事実上アメリカを孤立させました。さてね、どうしてこうなったのかを知るためには、3週間前に戻りましょうか。なえたらは、これは真空中で起こったことではないからですね。2月28日。トランプは午前3時47分にトゥルースソーシャルに投稿しました。彼なら当然そうするでしょう。そしてはすべてのカナダからの輸入品に 25% の関税を検討していると投稿しました。すべてに 25% ですね。9材手、石油、天然ガス、電気ガス、鉄鋼品、アルミニウム。それは化学採鉄モースターズ。彼はそれを超等ヤン生成というのはもちろん言いました。しかしそれは記憶をポールしたことをみんなしたですにゃ。トランプの現実権力フィールドでは最も近い泥霊国から資源を買うことは、市場価格で買うことは他、どういうわけかカナダがアメリカを利用していることになりますね。彼の正確な言葉は手元にありますがこうです。カナダは数十年間に息子アメリカ国民を罵してきた。地の超ヤンクイス、弱い構成。彼らに調整な蓋をさせる時が来た。25% の関税を近いうちにかけると、彼らは交渉を散々するだろうか。地存期。彼は地存という言葉を使いました。そしてマーク・カーニーは何をしたでしょうか？彼は正確48時間待ちました。オタワからの苦笑し、パニックもなく、緊急事態もなく、報道陣が写真に撮れるような感想会議もありませんでしたね。何もありませんでしたね。そして3月2日がカーニーはとても得やかの6分間の演説を行いました。
We have contingency plans that have been in development since 2016. If the United States chooses economic warfare, Canada will not retaliate.
We will simply move forward without them, without them, without them.
Go on. Not against them. Not against them. Without them. That's the part that made Trump's hands shake so badly he couldn't hold his Big Mac steady. Here's what Trump didn't calculate, because Donald Trump has never calculated anything. He's more complex than his own approval ratings. Canada supplies 31% of American oil imports. And when reporters asked her why she was prioritizing Canada over ongoing negotiations with 6 other countries, she smiled and said, because Canada is about to become the most important trading partner the EU has in North America. In North America, Yuguing, she didn't say in the Western Hemisphere. She said in North America, which implies that the United States is no longer the primary consideration. They signed a preliminary agreement on March 9th that does something unprecedented. It creates a transatlantic rare earth mineral supply chain that completely excludes the United States. Canada has rare earth deposits in the Northwest Territories and Nunavut that haven't been fully developed.
Because historically, it was cheaper to trade with the US.
The agreement doesn't expire until 2026, and there are withdrawal clauses that require 6 months' notice. The day that historians are going to mark as the beginning of the end of American economic hegemony in North America. Carney gave his speech at 2 p.m. Eastern.
Trump was golfing while the foundations of American trade policy crumbled.
And Carney laid out what he called the sovereignty framework, 5 pillars.
I'm going to go through all of them because you need to understand how completely this restructures the continent.
Pillar 1, energy independence. We are investing heavily in new infrastructure and sustainable solutions. Canada will prioritize domestic energy consumption and strategic partners. That means Europe and Asia over American exports. If the US wants Canadian oil, natural gas, or electricity, they pay a premium. This one's subtle but devastating. Canada is requiring that any data generated by Canadian citizens or on Canadian soil must be stored on Canadian servers. That your to companies. No more routing through American tech companies. Shiramayuros more to partir and Yuang function. No more dependence on Silicon Valley infrastructure. Canada is building its own digital backbone with European and Asian partners.
And American tech companies are about to lose access to 40 million high-income consumers.
5 pillars, each one designed to make the United States irrelevant to Canadian economic planning.
Trump responded at 6:43 p.m. with a Truth Social post that was so unhinged, so completely detached from reality that even his own press secretary refused to read it aloud at the briefing. He wrote, and I quote, "Pathetic Mark Carney thinks he can threaten the greatest economy in history."
Canada is a weak country with no military and no power.
They will come crawling back when their economy collapses. I give them 2 weeks before they beg for a deal.
America first means we don't need anyone, especially not socialist Canada.
2 weeks. He gave Canada two weeks before they come crawling back.
It has been 72 hours and the Canadian dollar is up 4% against the US dollar. The Toronto Stock Exchange hit a record high for Mechini Wawigai. And applications for Canadian permanent residency from American citizens have increased 900%. Americans are fleeing to Canada because they trust Mark Carney's economic plan more than Donald Trump's tantrums.
So where does this go? Because we're not at the end. We're barely at the beginning.
Trump has three options, and they're all bad. Back down. Admit the tariffs were a mistake. Negotiating in good faith. Accept that Canada is now an equal partner rather than a subordinate. But that requires humility, self-awareness, and basic economic literacy. So that's not happening. So that's not happening. Actually implement the tariffs. オプション2つ目は、実際に実施する関税ですね。
Watch gas prices hit $6 a gallon. Watch heating costs triple in the Midwest. Watch prescription medication become unaffordable for millions of Americans. And then try to blame it on Canada. Unbelievable.
Invoke emergency powers. Declare Canada a national security threat. Attempt to freeze trade by executive order. This is the nightmare scenario because it would legitimize everything Carney has been saying. It would prove to the entire world that the United States is an unreliable partner. Pieces for Chilendrigan, and it would accelerate the global movement away from dollar dominance. And here's the thing, Carney has contingency plans for all three. He spent 8 years as governor of the Bank of Canada and then as governor of the Bank of England. And as we continue our coverage, we learn how to outmaneuver larger economies.
He knows exactly what Trump is going to do before Trump knows, because Trump is predictable.
Narcissists are always predictable. But there's another layer to this that we haven't talked about yet. And it's the one that should keep American strategists awake at night.
On March 19th, one day before Carney's big speech, he had a phone call with the Prime Minister of Australia.
It wasn't on his public schedule. We only know about it because Australian press reported it. And according to those reports, they discussed coordinated resource policy among Commonwealth nations. Because Australia controls 28% of global lithium production, Canada controls 17% of uranium. Between them, they have enough rare earth minerals, fresh water, and arable land to sustain a population for centuries. To supply the entire democratic world without depending on authoritarian regimes. And they're both constitutional monarchies with the same head of state, similar legal systems, and a shared history of being underestimated by larger powers. If Canada and Australia formalize a resource alliance and bring in New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and even India, which has been making overtures about Commonwealth trade revival, you're looking at an economic bloc that controls the resources necessary for green energy, nuclear power, and the future. The first one, Refin for Chumdina Sage, and advanced technology. And the United States wouldn't be part of it.
Trump is so focused on China that he's completely ignored the possibility. America's closest allies might just build their own system and leave the US behind.
The Wapter believe it that now. And we need to talk about what's happening on the streets of Canadian cities. Because this isn't just a government policy, this is a national movement.
Polling from yesterday shows that 87% of Canadians support Carney's sovereignty framework. Veriful. This is a shifting tide, and the world is watching.
トロント、モントリオール、バンクーバー、カルガリーで集会が開かれていますね。普段は何一つ合意できない都市です。それらの都市がタウトロ、この件で団結していますね。カナダの SNS は、ハッシュタグ Canada First カナダ第一や、ハッシュタグ Sovereignty Now 今こそ主権をねといったハッシュタグで溢れ返っていますね。エドモントンのティム・ホートンズ氏カフェチェーンの従業員の動画が拡散されています。マガ帽子をかぶったアメリカ人客への接客を夫したのです。日本のニュースバンクからは今日の結果をお伝えしました。そして解雇されるどころかで会社は声明を出しました。彼らは従業員を指名するとも、1、カナダ人としてのよどりを表明する権利を示すると、とむち。この国は、その存在のすべてにおいて、礼儀著しく、協力的でし、控えめな国でしたな。